Hey, Build Show Network, Steve Basic Architect. We're out here at our Riverside project. Who wouldn't want that view from their family room, right? Absolutely gorgeous. That's quintessential New England river. One of the best views for many miles. But anyways, what are we talking about today? We're going to talk about single slope roofs and the hardware incorporated to help make them successful. So you can see above me, we have a 2x12 roof. It's a monoslope because it goes from plate here up to a ledger board, and it's a single slope, hence the monoslope name. So on the high side here, you can see the 2x12 comes up. It sits in a hanger, this little saddle hanger there, and the hanger is actually nailed to a ledger board that is then nailed off at each of the studs there. So basically the wall carries the ledger is carrying the rafters. Now, the cool thing about the connector there is Simpson has these connectors. These are LRU 212. So the 212 is for a 2x12. And you can see here that the rafter hanger, it has our nails where it gets nailed into that ledger board. It also has the shear holes here where the nails get shot into the side here so that it grabs and bites that 2x12. But also notice here, it has that sloped bottom that can be slightly bent and contoured or hammered up. And then there's actually a little nail hole in the bottom. So that 2x12 gets seated in there. This gets bent up to conform to whatever the slope of the roof is, and then it gets fully nailed off inside that hanger. So not only is it holding it vertically, but it's also holding it from getting pulled out. If we go down to the low side of the roof system here, you'll notice that that same 2x12 rafter comes down and it sits down on this double top plate. But notice that we have these little ties here that get nailed into the top plate, and then they twist, and you can see how they're nailed into each and every one of the rafter systems there. These are the standard rafter ties, I call them. These are Simpson's H2.5A clips. So basically what's happening up there is we have these 5 holes. This gets nailed into the double top plate. And then you can see the hanger goes up, turns 90 degrees, and then these are able to get nailed off into the side of the rafter. And like I said, I call them simply rafter hold downs. Some guys, I've heard them call them tie downs, hurricane ties. They have multiple names, but basically what they're trying to accommodate is as the wind blows against the building, hits the soffit, and tries to get these rafters to move upward, basically uplift is the structural term. These ties are made to basically hold down the roof to resist that uplift. So let's go back to the studio. We'll break out one of the sections and we'll talk about both of these details a little bit more in detail. But before we go, let's give you a second shot of that beautiful river view. Hence, that's why we call it the Riverside Project. I'll see you back at the studio.
All right, so sloped roof connectors. Hard to believe that Simpson has pretty much a hanger or some type of connector for almost every situation. And sloped roof rafters is no exception. So let's dive in. Got details here, got Big Red in hand, got a few thoughts that I'm willing to share. So let's talk sloped roof connectors. All right, everybody. So before we get into the detail, I just want to give you a quick lowdown on where are we talking about this detail. So you can see here we have this single slope rafter comes up to the outside of the wall and goes
comes out and becomes a rafter. Now, this section here goes beyond this section, so you can see I have this dashed in. That's the completed roof assembly, but that's beyond. This system here, for the most part, is stopping there. So we have that single slope roof. It's getting connected to the wall there. So obviously we have, you know, the gravity load here of that wanting to shear off there. So we need that proper connection there. So what does that detail look like? So here's that detail. And it is stripped down. You can see here is the stud wall behind the system here. This is the bottom plate. Now, I have other things in here dashed in. This is an LVL that's beyond, and we have some plates there. This is a sill plate. For up above, we have our zip R9 that comes down here. But the important thing was we have our stud wall here, and we frame 2x10 ledger here, and that gets bolted into the studs, and those are just simple ledger lock screws that go into there. But our 2x10 now comes up here, and that's our single slope. And you can see here, there's the header hanger, and you know, we saw it in the video. It basically comes down. There's some tabs. You can see the tabs here. Those are to get some nails into the side of the rafter, and then this gets nailed into that ledger. But down here there is a bendable piece that also has a tab, and you can see there. So that basically can fold up or fold down depending on, you know, is the roof slope a 3, is it a 12 or 9, or, you know, is it a 1 or a 2? So depending on that, you can fold that tab, and there's actually a nail that can go up through the bottom, showing there. And then we have, in this case here, these are 2x12s. This is actually a 2x12 ledger. A lot of projects trying to remember all the different pieces to them. But the important thing is, you know, in this 16 inches on center, if you're wondering, this is continuous. Our ledger lock screws are at 16 inches on center, obviously, because we want to get them into each of the studs. But a couple things that are important here. Obviously, getting the hanger in, getting all the appropriate nails, the right diameter to the nails, you know, all of those connectors by Simpson have recommendations for the fasteners, and they provide all the fasteners, so they have a really great system. If you're not familiar, Simpson Strong Tie is the name of the company. They've been around for a long time, pretty much. They've been around as long as I have been in the industry, for 30 years. So, and their connection spectrum of connectors is just exponentially larger than it was when I started. The other thing that is always important here that my structural engineer always wants is the roof sheathing comes up, and in this case here, this is a zip 5/8 OSB, standard roof sheathing. But the important thing is that he wants that sheathing to come up and get over the top of the 2x12, and he wants an 8-penny nail or an AT nail, and he wants them 6 inches on center there. And the reason for that is if we just nail the OSB to the 2x12s, then you have this slight
diaphragm that's really not secured to the house. But by bringing the OSB all the way up to that edge and coming over the top of the 2x12 and then simply nailing it down in there, well, that provides a rigid frame at the top of that diaphragm, so you don't get that lateral movement of the system. That's going to help certainly stiffen that up. So you have to make sure that obviously the 2x12 is below the plane of the 5/8 of an inch roof sheathing that's happening there, so that the roof sheathing can go all the way up to the stud frame, and then our zip R9 comes down to the top of that, and then we'll do whatever flashing system here, venting system, depending on what type of roof we're doing. But that is our slope connector detail. It's yeah, pretty straightforward. A lot of times, I remember in the past, sometimes, you know, you would do a detail where you have the wall, you would do a little 2x4, and then you would simply notch the 2x12 there. But you're at the risk of that shearing off in that dimension. I mean, 11 1/4, you take out 3 1/2, that leaves you 7 3/4. It's basically a 2x8 rafter on top of that, but you also have that ability to have horizontal shear along the grain of that 2x10 or 2x12 in this case. And if we simply just said, oh, well, we'll put a 2x4 under it, well, then now I have this kind of jog in the wall that I have to deal with there. So there has to be some way to figure out, how do I solve for that? You know, do I just take this straight across, or I don't know. But anyways, this Simpson Strong Tie adjustable hanger here, it really solves a lot of problems in not having to do all of these different ledgers and keep you out of trouble, maintain the full strength, get a nice shear diaphragm connection there. So a lot of good things happening just by virtue of being able to use that hanger. So there you have it. Single sloped roof connector. All right, there you have it. Sloped roof connectors. Everything and anything you've ever wanted to know about them. I'm sure there's much more, but we did hit the top at least. We took a little bit of knowledge away today. Anyways, if you're looking for more knowledge, Build Show Network. Huh? Does it get any better? Got all kinds of, literally thousands of videos between me and my colleagues on there, putting up great stuff every week. And it's all current stuff, so go look at it, enjoy it, live it, watch it 7 times. That's what the science says. Just going by the science. If you're still looking for more, Steve Basic Architect, tell all your friends, join in, and yeah, let's continue that discussion on Instagram. And lastly, Unbuilder Podcast, Peter Yost, Jake Bruton, and myself, talking about everything building. So go check it out. Unbuilder Podcast. Until next time, long live our buildings.